Welcome, brave souls. Tonight you'll witness a tale where sleep becomes a nightmare. In the silence, a single knock can unravel everything, and the shadows hide more than you think. As the story unfolds, remember, some dreams never let go. Stay with me, if you dare to uncover what truly interrupts your sleep.
It was a quiet night, the kind where the air is so still you could hear a pin drop. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself to sleep. The ticking of the clock on the wall was the only sound that accompanied me. My mind raced with thoughts that refused to be silenced. The stress of the week lingered in my head like an unwanted guest. I tried to focus on my breathing, a technique that usually helped me drift off, but tonight it was no use. I turned to my side, hoping a change in position would help. The bed felt unusually cold, the sheets almost clingy against my skin. I pulled the blanket up to my chin, seeking warmth that seemed elusive. The shadows in the room seemed to stretch longer, creeping across the walls as if alive. My eyes caught the faint glimmer of the moonlight peeking through the curtains, casting a silver sheen over everything. The silence was suddenly interrupted by a distant sound, like a faint knock, almost imperceptible. I brushed it off, thinking it must have been the house settling, or perhaps a branch tapping against the window. Minutes passed, and I found myself drifting closer to sleep. My eyelids grew heavy. The world around me began to blur. But just as I was about to surrender to slumber, there it was again, the knock, a little louder this time. I sat up in bed, fully awake now. My heart began to race, not out of fear, but curiosity. What could it be? I listened intently, waiting for the sound to come again, but the room had returned to its previous stillness. The room was bathed in darkness, broken only by the moonlight filtering through the curtains. I hesitated, but my curiosity got the better of me. I threw the covers aside and swung my legs over the edge of the bed, feeling the cool wooden floor beneath my feet. I stood up and walked towards the door, every step making the floor creak beneath my weight. The house was silent, but my ears were tuned to the slightest noise, searching for the source of the mysterious sound. The hallway stretched out before me, its shadows deeper and more menacing than I remembered. I hesitated again, but something compelled me to keep moving. I reached for the light switch, but my hand paused mid-air. I didn't want to disturb the stillness with artificial light. I walked down the hallway, my eyes adjusting to the darkness. The door to the living room was slightly ajar, as if inviting me in. I pushed it open slowly, half expecting something or someone to be waiting on the other side. The living room was empty, just as I had left it before heading to bed. Everything was in its place. The couch, the coffee table, the TV remote lying haphazardly on the armrest. Yet the feeling that something was off refused to leave me. A soft breeze blew through the room, causing the curtains to sway gently. I walked over to the window, my fingers brushing against the cold glass. It was locked, just as I had left it. There was no sign of anything unusual outside. Just as I turned to leave, there it was again. A knock, louder and clearer now, coming from behind me. My breath caught in my throat as I spun around, my eyes scanning the room. But there was nothing there. Nothing except for the oppressive silence. The knock had come from the hallway. I was sure of it. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I couldn't let it go. I needed to find out what was causing it. I stepped back into the hallway, the darkness seeming to close in around me. I moved cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. The hallway seemed longer than it should have been, each step echoing in the silence. I reached the end of the hallway and stopped in front of the door to the attic. The attic was a place I rarely visited, a storage space for old memories and forgotten items. The door was closed, but as I approached, I noticed it was slightly ajar, just enough to see a sliver of darkness beyond. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorknob. A part of me wanted to turn back, to return to the safety of my bed. But the other part, the part driven by curiosity, won out. I pushed the door open slowly. The attic was dark, the air thick with dust. I could barely see anything, but the feeling that something was there watching me was overwhelming. I reached for the light switch and flicked it on, illuminating the small, cluttered space. At first, nothing seemed out of place. Boxes piled up against the walls, old furniture covered with sheets, and a few forgotten items scattered around. But then I saw it, a small wooden chest in the corner, the lid slightly open. I walked over to the chest, my heart pounding in my ears. The knock had come from here, I was certain of it. I knelt down and slowly lifted the lid. Inside, there was nothing but old photographs and a dusty book. But as I reached for the book, I heard the knock again. This time, right behind me. My breath caught as I whipped around, but there was nothing there. Just the empty attic. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. The knock was too close, too real to be imagined. I turned back to the chest, my hands trembling as I reached for the book. The book was old, its cover faded and worn. I wiped away the dust, revealing a title written in a language I didn't recognize. The pages were yellowed with age, but as I opened it, I realized it was more than just an ordinary book. Inside were pages filled with symbols and strange drawings, almost like a diary or a journal. I couldn't make sense of it, but something about the book felt wrong, as if it didn't belong here. I could feel the weight of it in my hands, heavier than it should have been. As I flipped through the pages, a sudden gust of wind blew through the attic, slamming the door shut behind me. I jumped, the book slipping from my hands and falling to the floor with a thud. The attic was plunged into darkness once more. Panic surged through me as I scrambled to pick up the book. The knocking sound echoed again, louder and more insistent, coming from all around me. It was as if the very walls were alive, pulsing with a rhythm of their own. I backed away, my eyes darting around the room, searching for any sign of movement. The attic felt like it was closing in on me, the air growing thicker with each passing second. I needed to get out, but the door was shut tight, refusing to budge. Desperation set in as I banged on the door, calling out for help, but no one could hear me. The knocking continued, relentless and deafening, and then, as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. The silence that followed was more terrifying than the noise itself. I stood frozen in the darkness, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. The silence was suffocating, pressing down on me from all sides. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Was it real, or was it just a nightmare? The book lay at my feet, its pages splayed open as if mocking me. I didn't want to touch it again, but I couldn't leave it there. I knelt down and picked it up, the pages crinkling under my fingers. The symbols seemed to swirl and shift, as if alive. I knew I had to leave the attic. Whatever was happening, it was tied to this place, to this book. I walked over to the door and tried the knob once more. This time it turned easily, as if the door had never been stuck at all. I stepped out of the attic, closing the door firmly behind me. The hallway was quiet again, the shadows less menacing. I made my way back to my bedroom, the book still clutched tightly in my hand, unsure of what to do with it. As I reached my room, I paused at the threshold. The bed looked so inviting, but I knew sleep would not come easily after what had just happened. I placed the book on the nightstand, its presence unsettling. I sat on the edge of the bed, my mind replaying the events of the night. The knocking, the attic, the book. It all felt like a bad dream, but the weight of the book in my hand was proof that it was real. I didn't know what it meant, but I couldn't ignore it. As I lay down, pulling the blanket over me, I kept one eye on the book. The room was silent once more, but the memory of the knocking lingered in my mind. And as I finally drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning.
The story may have ended, but nightmares have a way of clinging to you, following you into the dark. Tonight, when the shadows lengthen and you feel that creeping dread, remember, some nightmares don't end when you wake up. If this story left you uneasy and you crave more terror, hit the like and subscribe button. The real nightmare is only just beginning.